Welcome to Sidequest, our weekly video game show here at Geekverse. I'm your host, Dylan Musk, and I have with me Taylor Field today, the nicknameless Taylor Field. How's it going, my friend?
It's good. I forgot a nickname, end of a long weekend, and it's just where the time go. But I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm excited for this episode. We have a lot of spicy topics, and I have a fun couple little things to do at the start here too. But yeah, we're gonna be breaking down that Xbox podcast with their future business plans. As well as there's even some Sony info out there too. So really, just the future of Xbox and PlayStation. A lot is up in the air, or things are changing. Things are good, things are bad. It's a lot going on for both sides of that quote unquote console war. So definitely a fun episode. Looking forward to. In terms of the shoutouts, not a whole lot tonight. Make sure to join the Patreon to get episodes early and ad free. You can get access to the exclusive podcast feed that has no ads in there, so it's a nice way to listen. I don't think there's much new in terms of side quests going up early these days, really just the weekly stuff, but soon there's probably going to be a couple episodes, maybe an X-Men episode. I'll tease that here. But yeah, everything else, we're doing all sorts of retros right now. We're recording Halo on a weekly basis, a review of the TV show, of course, season 2, so join us for that. Join the Discord as well. We're always talking in there about games and whatnot. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the shoutouts. Taylor, there's been a couple updates on the video game draft. A couple new games have come out recently, and so far, it's funny. This is like, it's a 2-horse race. Me and Kirkland still nothing on the board yet. We're still waiting in the wings here. But you and Travis have both your games so far have come out within a few days of each other on 2 separate occasions, which is funny. So we talked about the Tekken and Yakuza games that came out in January. You guys had very similar scores there, but you will both have another game now. You have Mario vs. Donkey Kong, that remake which came out. I didn't write down the exact number, but it's 70 something or other. And then Travis had Helldivers 2 come out, which was a little bit higher, but I think your Tekken was higher, his Infinite Wealth was higher. So it equals out that he's at 169 right now, and you're at 166. So between your two games right now, you guys are so close, so neck and neck, which is pretty exciting. So I don't know. It's fun to see. I like this little battle between you two that's going on. But soon, Final Fantasy Remake's going to be coming out, so I'll be on the board. And then I don't know what Kirkland's first thing that's coming out is, but soon enough we should have a bunch of things filling in this chart. But it's fun to keep an eye on that as the year goes on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then last week's episode we did a Skull and Bones impressions of the beta. That game's officially out now, in the wild, out in the world. Well, I don't know if you looked, but what do you think the Metacritic landed on?
Oh, I did look, and I mean, out of 100, I think it's kind of like the halfway mark around there, isn't it?
When I looked today, it was at 64.
Oh, okay.
And that's the collective score from the different platforms there. So, yeah, definitely, well above that 50, but still clearly in the yellow, I guess is a safe way to put it there. So, I don't know. I'm sure they wanted it to be a lot higher for this game that's been in development for a million years, but I think go back and listen to some of our complaints with the game. I don't know. I haven't listened to a whole lot of reviews or people's impressions on the game. Seems like, I don't know, people I follow on podcasts and stuff don't really seem to be playing it. Maybe they are just going to check it out in the next couple days here. I'm not too sure. But anyway, yeah, go back and check out our episode from last week. And then, Taylor, I have a little surprise little quiz for you here. So the last week in Marvel Snap, they've been doing a Halloween, or not a Halloween, a Valentine's Day event where they gave a bunch of iconic Marvel couples bonuses that worked with each other. So if you play one person of this couple, the other one would get +2 power, whatever it is, and the other one would get that bonus as well, which was super fun. It's been a really fun week to play the game because that just opens up so much more deck building options, and it makes these combos of characters that are fun canon combos, but they don't necessarily combo with each other in the game, work together. And so I've just had a ton of fun playing it. And I wanted to quiz you if you're able to pick what you think some of these iconic Marvel couples are, because a lot of them are MCU kind of iconic ones. A couple of them are maybe more low key or not necessarily MCU stuff. But just gonna quiz your Marvel knowledge here. I think it's 10 pairs.
Ooh.
So I want to see how many of these you can get. You can
Okay.
just rifle them off.
I'm gonna write down on my little notepad here. So we got Wanda and Vision.
That's one of them. Nice job. Yep.
And they're MCU based
They're not
specifically.
all MCU based, but I'd say like half of these are MCU characters or like MCU couples even that we've seen or even hinted at.
Okay.
About half of them I would say. But then other ones, there's really only one couple here that there's no chance in hell you would get because like I had knew these characters. Even if we had Travis here, he would if we gave him 7 hours, he wouldn't get this couple. That's how obscure the characters are. But I think the rest you should be able to get to, but it might be hard to just recall all these character names.
I'll say Reed Richards and Sue Storm.
Yep, that's another one. Good.
Richards
Hasn't happened yet, but we'll get it soon in the MCU, I'm sure.
What about Black Panther and Storm?
Okay, I'll give you a hint. Black Panther has one, but not Storm. Think about more of an MCU version that we've seen.
Oh, what is his lady's name in Black Panther? I might have to pull. Good Lord, Nakia in Black Panther.
That's the one. Yeah. Okay, you got that one. Nice
Okay.
Job. Nice job.
Oh, another
when
one.
You need some hints, let me know. But I think you can get a few more here.
It's tricky because I'm just wondering, like, how far, like, what is the extent of some of these other characters they would put in there? Other couples we got. I mean, what is there? Is there Michelle Jones, MJ in there?
No MJ. No
Okay.
MJ. Spidey's in there, but there's a spider-related one. Not MCU, but there's a spider-related one.
Like Black Cat and Peter Parker?
No, not Black Cat. Think Sonyverse.
Sonyverse. Like Madame Web?
No, there's no Madame Web characters in the game yet. This couple, technically, this is a hint for the Sonyverse one. This couple, maybe not official on screen yet, but they're definitely canoodling, but maybe not an official. You wouldn't say they're in a relationship yet.
Ooh, that's like a Venom and Lady Venom.
No. You're thinking. Think about other Sony, not.
Oh, what's Morbius's lady's name?
Not Morbius either. Think animated.
Animated. Oh, Miles Morales.
Yes.
And yeah, Spider-Gwen. Oh,
yeah,
of course.
There's another one. Okay, there's a couple from the key Avengers. Who do you got from the key Avengers?
Bruce Banner and Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow.
Really, you think that's an iconic Marvel couple?
Because they were definitely in cahoots, or they were in a relationship, right?
Cahoots, interesting word choice. That's not one of them though. Maybe I'm sure there's a comic book run where they were full on. I mean, there's definitely jokes about it, but I don't know if they were ever official in the MCU.
Hawkeye's wife is definitely not in the game. I'm
no, assuming. That would be a deep cut. Someday I'm sure she'll be in there.
But... it's MCU related. Peggy Carter, Captain America.
This one might be a bit tricky. So Captain America has one. That's not Peggy. Can you think of another character that I don't?
It's his niece, or her niece.
Yeah, you got it. Agent 13. Agent 13. So that's kind of a deep cut. Captain Carter's not in the game, so I'm sure they would have picked that if she was, but she's not in the game. Yeah, in the MCU, like I think they kiss right at some point.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's 5. You said there's 10 at least.
There's still 5 more here. Oh well, like I said, one of these duels you'll never get in 1,000 years. Another Avenger, another key Avenger here.
Another key Avenger. Okay, so Iron Man Pepper Potts.
Yes, you got it.
Pepper Potts is in there. Rescue, right?
I mean, Rescue's in there. Yeah, not technically. It doesn't say Pepper Potts, but the blue Iron Man looking thing. Okay. I'll give you another hint. One of these is very recent, the most recent phase. Maybe not necessarily a couple, maybe not like a established couple, but they definitely hooked up.
Doctor Strange and what is her name?
Well, it's not Doctor Strange, but
it's not Doctor Strange. Okay.
Yeah, what? Christine, right? Yeah, I don't.
Well, Christine's one. I was thinking of the other one.
The post credit lady. Yeah,
Yeah, post credit
yeah, not
lady.
that one. Not that one.
Ooh. Um.
Wasn't quite a one night stand. They definitely.
Oh,
But
Star Lord and Gamora.
that's one of them. Yeah, that's not what I was hinting at, but that's one of them.
Okay.
And
Not
I'm trying to
exactly
think of
a
like a
one night
hint I can give without
stand.
just giving it away distinctly.
Not a one night stand.
No, because I think they hooked up a couple times. It's from a TV show. Marvel,
TV
from
show.
MCU Disney Plus show.
Loki and Sylvie.
Not Loki.
Okay, what else do we got for shows? We got Secret Invasion, but I don't think there's any relationships really going on there. It's Marvel. I don't think there's any relationship going
I don't
on
think so.
there. Yeah, Echo, nothing there. And that
There's another
leaves.
show.
Oh, She-Hulk and Daredevil, really?
She-Hulk and Daredevil, which was a very fun combo, and they actually work really well together. I use that combo a lot, and they were really fun for this last week. And then this last one is from a TV show that we recently did a retrospective of.
A TV show we did a retro, so it has to be X-Men animated series.
Who do you think?
Is it Cyclops and Jean?
Nope. They're both in the game. That's kind of weird that they didn't get one, actually.
Interesting.
Cyclops is already very powerful. Maybe
Don't tell me it's Xavier and the alien
No.
chick.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, she's not in there. She's not in there yet.
Okay.
Someday.
How close is this? Like, is it like main X-Men crew having a relationship?
Yeah, you know this. You know this has been on again, off again. A lot of drama between these two.
Oh, Rogue and Gambit.
Rogue and Gambit. There you
Of
go.
course.
And then the last one was Sarah and Angela, two characters that I'm certain you don't know. I don't even know which part of the I don't know if I think Angela might be like an X-Men related thing. I have no idea. So you did pretty good there. You did pretty good.
Thank you. That was good.
But yeah, that was a really fun event. I hope they do more of that kind of stuff because that's always been a thing with that game. It's a bit weird. Is like none of the X-Men, maybe a couple of them, have like synergies together. So you can make a deck of like all X-Men, but it's not really going to be a very strong deck. You know, you might have fun with it, but it's not necessarily going to, they're not going to like combo off each other in interesting ways, you know? And so that's why it's fun to have these iconic combos. And they were like really overpowered, but I think they kind of admitted that too. They're like, you know, this next week's going to be imbalanced, but we don't even care. But somehow I didn't even see a lot of people using these cards or these combos. But me and I know Clay over in our Discord, we're having a lot of fun.
Is it permanent or just
no? It was just for a
temporary?
week. Like I think it ends probably tomorrow. So I'm a little sad actually because that Daredevil She-Hulk combo was really strong. So I'm gonna miss playing that particular deck. But there you go. Taylor, was there any other games you've been playing recently you wanted to shout out, or do you want to get into some of this Xbox stuff?
I'd shout out Mario Wonder again. Me and Madison,
nice.
we're playing a little bit more of that, trying to just finish that off and roll credits on it. But yeah, some of the levels are just getting a lot more intense, and Madison's definitely not as proficient as I am.
Is she rocking the Yoshi, or is she
no,
standing to be like, no, I gotta play as the harder characters?
She's jumped over from being a Yoshi to playing as Peach, which is kind of fun. So yeah. I appreciate it because I just remember just when you're moving and you accidentally land on top of Yoshi and it automatically triggers that mounting effect, and it's just so annoying. So many deaths that have happened because of that. So
that's fair enough. Yeah. What world are you in right now?
Oh gosh, we have 2 left. We just completed
the last 3 you can do in like any order, I think, right?
I think so. Yeah. So we just completed the no water desert land.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that game. It was a really good time. Yeah, I think for me, nothing really new. Like I was talking to you about Toem last week, I think, and I beat the game, but then I guess they added like a post-release, like it's not like a paid DLC. They just added like a new island essentially afterwards at some point. So I still have more to do there, but that game was such a joy from start to finish. Really, really enjoyed it, and still just working through Baldur's Gate. I'm in Act 3 now officially, but I'm taking my time with it. When I'm finally like at the city of Baldur's Gate, I'm at the gate. I haven't actually gone in the city yet, but it's taken me so long just to get to the freaking titular city. So that's pretty sweet. And then it's fun. Because you were talking about Call of Duty last week and the whatever the map's called that they brought back, and it was nice to finally get a win on
Fortune's
it
Keep.
with you and Travis and Emily last night, 2 nights ago. When was that last night?
Mhm.
Whenever that
That
was.
was last night. A lot of second places and then one
Oh
win.
my god, we've probably gotten at least 15 second places on that map. It's
Mm-hmm.
insane, but finally got the W, which was pretty fun. So
Mhm.
that's been good as well. Yeah, let's talk about this Xbox news. So this has been a real saga, of course, where there has been all sorts of rumors for the last few weeks of these Xbox games are going to other platforms, and then I feel like people were getting pretty doom and gloom about it of like, oh, Xbox never gonna make another console. They're gonna just only be a publisher. Every game, Starfield, Indiana Jones, after 3 months is going over to PlayStation, and Xbox was like freaking out at this. And Phil Spencer had a tweet, but they finally kind of responded to these all these rumors in the form of a podcast that was like 25 minutes long ish, and I think it seems like the general consensus of the podcast was like, oh, that was pretty unexciting and uninteresting, and there really wasn't much in there. And so there's like two sides where it's like, one, I think it was smart that they branded it as like this podcast thing instead of like a showcase or I don't know, some big event where they're trying to make it seem like some hype thing. It was more just like, hey, we got hit on the back foot. All these rumors are coming out and we just have to like squash them. But then like we can't squash all of them because some of it is correct. And I think they really wanted it to make sure it was their wording and not just like a tweet that goes out there and misinterpreted. So in that way, I think it was wise what they did. But when you watch it and it's like, whether an Xbox fan or a PlayStation fan or whoever, it's just like a whole lot of nothing. And so there is some things that we're going to dig into here and we can really read into it here. Because the way I see it is like every word that they said in this podcast was like combed through by like 17 PR people, like everything was like laser precise. And so I think because of that, the things that they did say, we can take and really try and riff on it and see like really what they mean here in the greater scheme of things. But they also kind of held back. Like they told us, 4 games are coming to other platforms, but we're not going to tell you which ones, but we're going to hint at it. And then there's going to be more rumors because we didn't confirm it, which is like, just confirm it, please. So I don't know. Did you have any like overall takes on the podcast or I don't know, is your opinion different from mine in that way in any way?
Well, I'm not a big fan of having a podcast kind of talk about this kind of thing, like them putting out this kind of information through a podcast. But I understand, like, I like seeing the shows that Xbox does, presentations and everything like that. But I understand that their hand was forced because rumors were going rampant. Everyone's talking on the Discord about this and like the titles that are going to be coming to Sony consoles and all that kind of stuff. Thinking, man, this is crazy. And I'm glad that there is the clarification to a slight degree. I mean, we'll get into it more, but it's the people I think are still uncertain with how things are. I think we got a couple answers, but it was really nothing. It didn't really clear the air much. It's just kind of left things kind of ambiguous, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Let's get into it then. So we're gonna go through this in kind of the order that they went through it. So they confirmed they have 4 games and just 4 games for now, but they were trying to be very clear, I feel like, about like, hey, if you're on other platforms and these are not one of the 4 games that you want, like, don't wait up for it because we're just doing this as like a test, I guess a test run essentially, or they feel like they're going to get some additional value out of this. So they said that it's going to be 4 games, 2 community-driven games, and 2 smaller games. They said it's like these are probably new IP sort of games that are more than a year old, and they feel like games that have quote unquote peaked on Xbox. Like they're still going to sell and have their communities there for sure, but they feel like they've already gotten, let's say 95% of the value off that platform. And so they want to move that over to other platforms as well to get that second run of potential success over there as well. So one thing that also stood to me when I was going through this and I was trying to just look at what are the potential games that they could be talking about here. And I was looking at Minecraft Legends and I kind of forgot that was like under Xbox's umbrella, first party game, but they did launch that on all platforms. That was on PlayStation. can't remember. I think it's on Switch as well. So it's interesting that like this whole scuttlebutt's going on, and like they kind of did this already last year with another game, and we didn't really talk about it that much. Now maybe it's because it's Minecraft, which is a huge IP, and it's been established on these other platforms. So it's maybe a slight difference in some of these other first-party exclusives. But I guess it's not technically new. And then we obviously had other cases where they acquired Bethesda, and then there's other Bethesda games that were already on PlayStation exclusively. So there's already been some stuff in the air there, but the rumors that have surfaced kind of after this have been that those 4 games are going to be Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, and Pentiment. Just to get your first thoughts on this, like as a primary Xbox user, someone who hasn't really had a Sony console in a while, you have your Switch, of course, but you're like all about that Xbox. You're probably going to get whatever the next generation is, no matter what. Like, are you bothered by this at all? That these games that are exclusive to your preferred platform are going elsewhere?
I'd love to be a fly on the wall and see what kind of meetings and discussions that they're having in these meetings consist of. But as a consumer and a supporter of Microsoft and Xbox, it does bother me.
Okay.
But I, at the same time, I think that's my own biasness that's been pre-established throughout 2 console wars.
Yeah. Does it
It
bother you because of the pride element of like you want Xbox to have exclusive titles
oh
and for
yeah,
that to mean something? That's the reason.
absolutely. That is definitely a factor in it, and w- it shouldn't be. At its core, it really shouldn't be. You should just pick a console that you like and just play games on that console that you enjoy. And of course, there are exclusivity scenarios, and I can't play all the games that I would like to play,
Mm-hmm.
and that definitely fuels that kind of sense. Like, well, yeah, well, Xbox should be better. Than Xbox should put out their own exclusives and stuff like that. But I mean, ultimately, if we were to get some more titles shared on Xbox, then that's cool. But that's not the case here. The case is, okay, we're getting Xbox titles that are being shared on other consoles. So to me, that feels like it does kind of sting a little bit more as a fan. I
Mm-hmm.
would I would want them to be building up that relationship of bringing in these titles to Xbox more, like those other like Sony titles and
Yeah.
whatnot, than sharing their share the load kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
it's so it does bother me on that regard, and yeah, like yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean for me I guess I feel less connected, even though I love my Series X and that's my main console right now for new games and whatnot. Like it doesn't really bother me at all. I more games for more people is a good thing, and I think there's a very specific type of game that they're I mean, they haven't announced what the games are, right? So we're reading into it to an extent. But just even what they've said of like it being new IP, like new franchises, to me that's like kind of confirming that okay, it's not going to be Halo Infinite, which they could be talking about as like a community driven game. Not going to be like a Forza Horizon 5, not like a Gears of War. And so I feel like those big games that you really think of as Xbox games and games that would be considered like console sellers, in my mind, like it doesn't seem like those are going to be the ones that are going to be moving over to rival platforms, even if there is some value to having that. Of course, they're already on PC, but I mean, Switch can't run those games anyway, and it doesn't seem like they. I think it's important for the Xbox brand to some extent to keep some exclusives, obviously, but I think it's okay to get rid of, not get rid of, but also share the load of some of those games with other communities as well. And so I don't know, like when you saw that list, or not that list, but just those 4 games, like were there other ones that came to your mind? Because honestly, when I was going through the list, I'm like, there's not a lot of Series X exclusives that have come out, and even when you go back to Xbox One era, there wasn't a ton of stuff. So like, I kind of feel like that rumor of those 4 games, Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, like I don't know what else it could be, unless it is like a Halo or a Forza, but I don't think it's going to be those things. Plus, they kind of said, yeah, it's not going to be like things from existing franchises. It's going to be new games. So they could be, weaseling it with the wording. But if I'm to believe it's those 4 games, I don't see that as a big deal for them to get rid of it and get the value from it. But then there's also ones like Pentiment, for example. Like, how much value are they really going to get from putting that on other platforms? Like, maybe it's going to sell like wild on Switch and PlayStation, I suppose. But Pentiment was the one that really stood out to me as being like, I don't really see the purpose of of bringing that game over to other platforms. Not that it's not like a console seller, right, in the way I think of what console sellers are. So I don't know if it's like, oh, they need to keep it only on Xbox so people will come to that console for it. But that was the one to me that seemed like a weird inclusion, if it is in fact the case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, sorry, I know I said like a million things there. But do you think there could be other games in the mix that we haven't considered here?
But I would say that it's a possibility. It's so hard for me to actually keep track of what other titles are Xbox exclusive aside from your Gears of War, your Halo, and
Yeah,
Forza and whatnot. I mean, maybe Microsoft Flight Simulator. That's something that
that's
they
an
want to get
interesting
out
thought.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how a Switch would handle that game. That would blow my mind.
Would you
Um,
consider that to be a community driven game? Because they said like two of these games are community driven. I think Sea of Thieves is like, I'm happy to put 99% chance on that happening. I think that one's absolutely happening. The other community driven one, I guess, would be Grounded, which makes sense. I don't really think of it. I mean, it's a co-op game, so I guess that's what they mean there. But uh, so I guess I don't know. Flight Simulator could be in that ball camp. I don't. But that ball game, I don't know.
it's been a good minute since I played Flight Simulator, and I want to say that I know that there's definitely a following and a community for it, and I believe that it's kind of like an online flying with your friends kind of a type deal as well. Don't quote me on that.
I mean, I don't think there's like officially co-op, but I feel like it's one of those games that I don't know. You play with your friends still somehow. I don't know. It seems
Yeah,
like to me, it seems like there's a community aspect to the game, and like Pentiment doesn't really have.
yeah. So yeah, Pentiment's a very interesting one for that. Just trying to think of other titles that could be in there. So yeah, I mean, Grounded, Sea of Thieves.
Because like they even talked about how, like, okay, these are games we want to put on other platforms to help them grow, and there's multiple ideas there of like, okay, get people to love these games, and they will want to come to Xbox to experience more of games like that. But also like test the waters on these games, see the popularity, and maybe explore sequels, or follow up content from those franchises. And so like Sea of Thieves, Grounded, once again, community games are getting continual updates. That makes sense. Hi-Fi Rush, I think that game seems to me like 100% chance it's going to get a sequel at this point. Hi-Fi Rush 2 is coming out in 2 years. You quote me on that. I'm happy to like throw that down. Pentiment though, like I don't know, is like maybe there's just a wing of Obsidian that's going to keep making these Pentiment games or Pentiment likes or other similar games to it. So I don't know. That seems like a bit like it maybe doesn't fit in the mold there. So if that one doesn't end up being it, I think I would be not as shocked. Whereas Hi-Fi Rush, I feel like that's a game that is going to sell really well on other platforms. I think on Switch that game's going to be huge. I think on PlayStation it's going to be huge as well. So I think Hi-Fi Rush is a really smart idea, and that one makes sense for me in the value proposition of it. Um, the other angle to this, if we look at it, and I know I'm going all over the place here, so I apologize for that, but Grounded and Pentiment, like both Obsidian titles, right? And so maybe that's just something Obsidian really wants from their games, is they want to reach more players, they want to reach out and bring these games elsewhere. So maybe that's an angle to it as well that we need to consider in this equation.
Yeah, and I don't know what the communities are like still for Grounded and Sea of Thieves in this day and age.
I mean, I
I,
think Sea of Thieves is still freaking massive.
it is.
Like
They
it's
keep
concurrent
churning content
players,
out.
tons of new content. And Grounded, I don't know how big that community is, but I know as of November they launched like community made maps was a big huge feature, so people like could customize backyards and whole levels and
Oh,
areas, and I had a lot
damn.
of fun going down and going through that, downloading levels and stuff. So that I'm sure put a big resurgence into the game, and it like must like it has got multiple updates, so it must still, and it was like it had years of early access before its official launch. So I don't know. It must be like doing pretty well, and I guess they want to put that out to other platforms to keep that growing as well. So I'm into that. Like Grounded was my game of the year in 2022, so it getting years of more content, I'm totally happy with. I don't think it's a game that needs a sequel. I think you just could build off it, make new areas, allow the players to make big new areas as well. So that one, it makes sense to me as well.
It concerns me because I've seen in the past where, let's say you have a game that's releasing on all consoles, but each console gets different DLC and whatnot. I think we
Mm,
ran into this with Hogwarts Legacy, where
right.
we because you had it on Xbox, so
Yep.
we had the Prisoner of Azkaban, or not Prisoner of Azkaban, but we had an Azkaban mission. that was
Was that not just
involved.
because of our house choice? I think there was an
Oh,
exclusive
was it a house
mission, but that was
choice?
like exclusive to PlayStation. There was like that haunted house mission, right?
Oh, you're right. Okay, well that works as an example then, because yeah, you have extra missions based on what console you're playing on, and I think that's neat. But at the same time, I don't think that's very fair. So if they dish out Grounded, Sea of Thieves, and Pentiment Hi-Fi Rush to PlayStation, Switch, they're like, okay, and on Switch you're gonna get like a whole bunch of new stuff that's you can't play on Xbox, yada yada yada. I think that would be really really rude and uh, like a shot towards the current fan base and community that's already been supporting those games. And I wouldn't put it out of the question that they could be doing something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's always something I've wondered if they do bring games over is just the value proposition is still there on Xbox because of Game Pass. That's a
Mm-hmm.
huge thing. That's like you're just going to be a better place to play that game because you don't have to if you're as long as you're subscribed to that service, you don't actually have to buy the game. And then you get discounts on stuff, you get DLC and whatnot cheaper because of that too. So all of that makes sense, but I guess the actual content is not something they want to make exclusive, which I think is a good move. I agree with you there that it just feels bad as a player, like especially like Avengers had that too, right? Like Spider-Man exclusive character to PlayStation. Obviously, that game
Mm-hmm.
needed all the help it could get, but that is a huge hit for players on other platforms, and you didn't get anything in return. It's not like okay, well, PlayStation gets Spider-Man, but you get Doctor Strange over there on Xbox. It's just you get nothing. You don't get that character, and there's no good reason for it as a consumer. So that kind of thing sucks. So yeah, I hope that's not part of the plan here. I hope it's more just like hey, if you like this game, if you want to get the sequel, why not come over to Xbox? You can get it on Game Pass. You don't have to pay for the game. And I hope that's the way you get people in the door rather than like making the PlayStation version really buggy and like go
Mm-hmm.
over to Xbox, play a better version, or have the more content. I guess I should mention this too that they clarified that the four games that are coming over, they're not Starfield and not Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones makes sense. They haven't really talked about how future games are going to work. They hinted at it, but not really. And then so they mentioned it's not Starfield, which I think is a big deal, even if that game has kind of fallen in public favor since its release. Still is a really big success. Still, it's a Bethesda, first person open world exploration game. So I think that's a good one to not get rid of. We could also consider like Redfall could be in that wheel. They said it's like all games that have been out for more than a year. Redfall has not, so I don't think they're talking about Redfall here. And I also don't think I think that game is just was received so poorly that they don't want to have a second wind of it in the conversation by putting it on other platforms. It is a community driven one. I think it would probably be good for the game in terms of having more players, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're gonna do it. I think they're just gonna release the two DLC characters they promised and then never talk about that game again, or and never do another Redfall like that. I think that's pretty safe to say for Redfall. The other thing I was thinking is like, what about State of Decay? That's kind of like a community, like co-op-y sort of game, right?
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
That third one, I don't know where the hell it is, but like State of Decay 2, I mean, not a Series X game, but they didn't really specify any of these are Series X games. A lot of these things are cross-platform anyway, so to me that seems like okay, it could be a potential, but then once again that's a sequel and it's like an established franchise which maybe they hinted at weren't going to be the games that were coming over, plus that's kind of an older game. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea is they want to do this for newer-ish games that are still
Mm-hmm.
going to give them pretty good value by like I said, like Hi-Fi Rush is going to sell so many copies when you bring it over to these other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, is there other games that could be? I think we've kind of covered like what it could
Yeah.
be, like
I mean,
Sunset Overdrive, but like I don't see
oh
Insomniac going
gosh.
back to like make this Xbox game on other platforms now that they're PlayStation.
Yeah, I mean, Sunset
And then
Overdrive.
we're
What we got?
talking, then we're talking about really
Rise.
old games at that point. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tricky. I just it's just one of those moves that Xbox is doing that I mean, as a fan of Xbox, I don't feel like it's not gonna better my experience
Yeah,
as a console owner. It betters
right.
other people. And while that's great, more, yeah, as you said, more games, more people, and more accessibility, which is wonderful by all means. But at the same time, I'm still waiting to see new, like, some of my favorite IPs get release dates or
Yeah,
new announcements, even
yeah.
for on Xbox, and that's still up in the air, not happening. And you just see them kind of catering to turning an Xbox into more of like a family box than really making it
Mm-hmm.
a gaming machine.
Yeah.
And
No,
yeah.
I mean, I think there is validity to that. Like, for developers, I think it's much far easier to make your game for, in this case, two platforms, PC and Xbox. You don't have to worry about other versions. That comes with all sorts of design challenges and whatnot. And then you're talking about all these updates that you got to do, DLC. And so that's maybe not something that we would necessarily notice as consumers, but still, like, yeah, it's development is going to take longer on games if you have to develop for more platforms, or the games are going to come out in the same amount of time, but they're going to be way buggier because they didn't spend as much time with each version of the game. So I think in that sense, like as an Xbox gamer, I can see where there's some disappointment there. Like, yeah, maybe my games will take longer, and it's like, yeah, I don't get any value out of this other than the continued well-being of Xbox as a company. But like, they have so much money, like it's not like you're going to be an issue there. But then if you're a huge fan of Sea of Thieves, like maybe this coming to other consoles gives them the kind of capital to keep working on the game for another 10 years. And if you're a Sea of Thieves fan, that's great. And maybe they wouldn't have been able to do that without doing this play. The other side of the coin is that the next game from the Sea of Thieves developer from Rare, Everwild, right, which we heard about like forever ago, and we haven't gotten an update on ever. Like, is that game even still in development, or have they just all in on Sea of Thieves, and maybe they even halted development on that to like, oh yeah, let's get this port going over to other platforms and make sure all that works. Like, I can see that side of the argument too, but I think selfishly, personally as a Grounded fan, I think this is probably great. I want more people to play this game because it's amazing and very underrated. And yeah, that'll just probably put more money in Obsidian's pocket to keep pumping out updates for it, or higher chance of Grounded 2 happening. So definitely pros and cons no matter which way you slice it, but I can definitely I can see your point of view for sure. Question, do you think any of this was a pivot since all the rumors in terms of like maybe Starfield was in their plans or Indiana Jones was in their plans, but then they saw how the internet responded to these things and decided, we're going to put the halt on that and still go ahead with these 4 games that we've had in active development for other platforms, but we're going to cancel on like some of these other things. You think there's any chance of that? I mean, I'm sure a lot of these things take a really long time to make these decisions, but it's not like they just did a knee-jerk video the day these rumors came out. Like, they did take a couple weeks to carefully orchestrate a podcast, right? So like that's well edited and had all these specific questions from one of their employees. Like it's very clear that they took their time there. So do you think there was any pivot that happened in between the rumors and the announcement?
I'd want to say there could be, but if we look at Xbox's history, this kind of thing has happened before, whether it's like, oh, your Xbox One needs to have an internet connection at all times to play games. And what happened? That was a big pivot.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a very likely chance, but at the same time, I also think that Xbox is in a situation where, I mean, not just Xbox, every company, money speaks. And if they're looking at a chart and they can see how much money they would make by putting some of these other titles and make them available, like Indiana Jones, Starfield, whatnot. I think that would force their hand to go through with something like that and ignore the reception, because I mean, who's all complaining? Is it like our PlayStation people complaining like, oh, we can't get, like, let me rephrase that. Are PlayStation people complaining that, oh, Xbox is going to make Starfield on other consoles? I don't think that community is complaining. The only people complaining are just Xbox, but they've already made their money off of all those people. So if they put it on a PlayStation console, they're going to make even more money. So it's just their one fan base that they're alienating, really.
Yeah, and I mean, they're potentially removing people's faith in them as a company, and they're like, well, why would I get the next Xbox if I'm going to get some games, whatever, the games I'm interested. Let's say you are a Sea of Thieves fan. Yeah, well, shit, I'm just going to go buy PlayStation next because I'll get the sequel to that game and all the DLC over there. I don't have to have on this Xbox that just has less exclusives than PlayStation otherwise, right? And if they're, other than that, just pretty much the same console in terms of power and capabilities, it's like, makes that decision even easier. So let's take our first break and we'll get right back, and we have even more to discuss with this. Okay, we are back. So I want to ask you about this too. Like, what do you think the future plans are going to be? I pulled a couple quotes. So they talked about how these games going over to other platforms are going to drive business value. They're going to bring people to Xbox, as I mentioned earlier. Phil was also talking about how he believes the future of games is going to move away from exclusivity. And he wants to build Xbox as a place for developers to go, developers that are, not looking to make exclusive titles. kind of a weird point, but if you listen to the podcast, I'm sure he worded it in a more nuanced way than I just did reciting it. But what do you think we can expect moving forward? Because I feel like maybe right now the play for them is, okay, do these 4 games, we committed to it. They haven't announced what these games are yet, right? So we don't know how long that will take for the announcements and then the games to come out on these other platforms. But wait, see how that goes, see what the reception is, see what the numbers are on it. And then I think maybe at that point decide what the future is going to be, what other games could get that treatment. But yeah, what do you think there's any games that we currently have announced for Xbox that you think will eventually end up coming to these other platforms?
Uh it's hard to say. So, like games, you mean games that haven't been like
Games that are announced but haven't come out yet
that
for
haven't come out
that
yet.
are
So
like
like
Xbox
Fable,
exclusives. Yeah, things
um,
like that.
yeah, that'd be interesting I mean, it's hard to think about if that were actually be the case. Um,
I'll throw some at you and let me know what you think. I
okay.
mentioned State of Decay 2, but what about State of Decay 3 when that eventually comes out? Co-op game. Does that make sense to have on multiple platforms?
I want to say yes, but at the same time, I feel like, well, how are people supposed to go back and play the other ones? And maybe
Mm,
that's the kicker, though. Maybe, hey, we're going to be doing this, as you said, to bring people coming in or bring people in towards Xbox. And okay, people want to play these other versions of this franchise, this series. Then yeah, I got to get an
yeah, that makes
Xbox so I
sense.
can play the first and second one. So that's totally justifiable. I
Yep.
think State of Decay 3, you could see that because, as far as I'm aware, I'm still kind of immersed in the community. Well, I don't play the game really anymore. I still see that there's a rich community involved with it, and people are just crazy about
Yeah.
that game.
Dude, where the
So,
frick is that game? I'm
uh,
so surprised that we haven't gotten an update on that in a long time.
I know I'm
That's
waiting.
weird.
That's a day one for me
Yeah.
immediately. So,
I'm very excited to check it out too, since it's Game Pass. What about Avowed or Outer Worlds 2? Considering that these 2 other Obsidian games are very likely going to come to other platforms. Outer Worlds, the first one, was before the acquisition of Obsidian, so that is on. I don't. It is on Switch, I think, too. So yeah, it's on all the other
oh,
platforms. So I think Outer Worlds 2 makes a lot of sense. Avowed is a new IP, but it still is like it seems like a lot of Obsidian games are getting that treatment of coming to other platforms. What do you think about those 2?
yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Then I guess if they already have that kind of a good rapport of putting out those the developers titles, then I mean I could
Yeah.
absolutely see that. Um, is this something too that we think? I mean, they said platforms, right? So we can just assume it's PlayStation and Nintendo Switch. We're not thinking like
I think Switch where the Switch is capable of running these games, right? But even then, there could be streaming versions. But I mean, like if the Switch is powerful enough to play the game, then I think it will come to Switch. So like
okay,
Hi-Fi Rush is a game that I think is possible. I think Pentiment Grounded and Sea of Thieves. I think all of those probably should be able to run on a Switch. Hopefully, I mean,
mm-hmm.
at the very least, the Switch 2, which is maybe coming out later this year or within the next fiscal year.
Because I was curious. Not every Xbox title that has come out has been immediately released on PC. I think Halo 5 is an
Hmm.
example of that. Back in the day when Halo 5 came out on consoles, it took a
Right.
while, and finally they put it on PC.
I think
So
they've
I'm
been
just
pretty consistent with that since like Series X release, though,
have
right?
they been okay? That would make
I
sense. I was
can't
just
think of another
curious
one
if.
that didn't. I mean, there's been some games that are like only on PC, like
Hmm.
Ara History Untold, I believe, like that we got in the developer direct. I think that's just a PC game, right? So
Okay.
there's games like that that exist.
Okay. I wasn't
Um,
sure if it was something
yeah,
maybe like they'd still kind of hold out on Sony and put it like more on like PC and
yeah,
Switch and whatnot. Because I still feel like when you said Outer Worlds is on Switch, I mean that's fantastic, and it's just crazy to think that Switch has that love from Microsoft more than PlayStation does at this time.
right.
And that's why I'd like to hear those conversations. Like, is Xbox really pushing forward, and Sony's kind of apprehensive, like, no, we don't really
Mm-hmm.
want that, or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, another angle of this that me and Travis talked about is like could this mean that Game Pass is coming to these other platforms and therefore that's why they're putting these games there so they have more of a roster? But they talked about in this very briefly, just like yeah, Game Pass not coming to other platforms. Like they kind of deconfirm that for the time being, so that's fine. The other one, the last one, I guess, is once again Everwild. If that does come out, if that's to be believed, very similar to Sea of Thieves in terms of format, but just a different setting, a new IP. I think we could very well see that one come to other platforms as well. That makes a lot of sense. Keep that multiplayer games having as many players as possible. That makes a lot of sense. And then other than that, like there aren't really a whole lot that scream out to me as being obvious games that are going to come to other platforms. And I think when you look at it, like Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment, I imagine those games had much smaller budgets than your typical AAA game. Pentiment for sure. There were also games. Hi-Fi Rush got shadow dropped, and then Pentiment got announced at the June showcase. Came out that November, I think it was. So games that had very quick turnaround. So I feel like other games that we're going to see come to these other platforms could be in that wheelhouse where they are smaller games that we don't currently have announced, but might even get announced at the June showcase, come out in the fall, a year later come out on PlayStation. I could see that kind of thing happening as well. So I feel like those smaller, more quote unquote budget titles, I think we could see that thing happening a lot more. They did confirm in this that they are doing their June showcase. That's not a shocking take. They probably already said that elsewhere, but it's nice to have that to look forward to. What else they talked about, or anything else on the game side, or do you want to move on to these other touch points?
We can move on.
Okay. Yeah, so they finally confirmed that since the Activision Blizzard acquisition, as of March 28th, that'll be the first time any of those games are coming onto Game Pass. Diablo 4 is going to be the first one, so that's coming at the end of March. So that's awesome. That's good. That's within less than a year of the game coming out proper. So I think the timing is pretty decent on that. I was a little bummed that that's all they mentioned for that. I hope there's other games with that, but they just headline it with Diablo, and then maybe there's other smaller games that are old games that they don't feel like mentioning in this way. But I think that's one of the things I'm most excited for with that acquisition is just like all the random smaller old games that exist that I'll be able to go check out and just maybe play 10 minutes of. I'm like, I'm not for me. Cancel out, try another one, and just download all these new games. I mean, I own Diablo 4, so that's also why I'm not as excited for it. However, it runs like shit on my PC. So to be able to play it on my Xbox with 60 frames, or hopefully 60 frames, I mean, who even knows these days with the freaking Series X. But yeah, that's a cool one. Are you going to be checking out Diablo 4, do you think?
Oh, it's been on my mind, but it's still way down the list.
Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. I mean, multiplayer could be fun. Jump into a little campaign together.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. They also talked about hardware in a way that I felt was kind of weird and ambiguous. They said that they have exciting stuff coming out in hardware this holiday, and then they're gonna. They didn't necessarily say this was this year, but they said their next generation roadmap is going to be the largest technical leap of all time, which is just wordless mumbo jumbo in my opinion, because they say that every time. The teraflops or the Series X, all these things, they're always talking about how it's going to be this huge technical leap. And I believe them, but then Starfield comes out and it's fucking 30 frames and like shitty graphics. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, this is why is this locked at 30 frames? I'm so salty at this. So I'll believe it when I see it. With that, show me the Starfield 120 frames patch for that new console, and I'll believe you. But yeah, what do you think this exciting stuff coming out this holiday is for hardware? There's been some rumors recently of like a handheld, like a Switch thing or a Steam Deck equivalent for Xbox, which they've not ventured into prior. But yeah, what do you expect for this hardware?
I would love to see their HoloLens kind of make a proper jump into gaming. I remember a few E3s ago, Xbox unveiled their HoloLens, and they had someone basically wearing it and basically looking around like they were in a hangar bay of a UNSC ship at Halo, and they could see out the windows, and they were playing Minecraft with it too. They were world building and building everything in Minecraft on their coffee table. It was really, really cool. And it's the tech is there. It's just been really focused and drifted away from the gaming and turned into other things. I think primarily like manufacturing, engineering, construction, healthcare, education, that sort of stuff. So it's really been pulled aside from the gaming aspect. And when you look at it, like everyone's, and for rightfully so, everyone's raving about this. I think it's Apple Vision. But I mean, that's essentially what the HoloLens is. The HoloLens is almost like pretty much identical. You can pop up your calls in real time while you're working on real time and whatnot. Right. So transition that more into the gaming aspect, because I think that there's untapped potential there. While VR tech is one thing, I think that if they can really nail down just like no remotes in your hands, like what is it, Assassin's Creed Nexus? I think I know you got remotes with that, but just kind of like polish it a little bit, a little more refinement. I'd like to see that tech kind of make it there.
I respect that, but I don't want them to go down. I'm just like, I'm not gonna buy it. I feel like they're already spread so thin. Like, I don't know if I I don't know if I want that, but yeah, for your sake, I hope they do it. I think it would be cool if they did a handheld of some degree, especially with PlayStation not being on that market anymore. I mean, they have the Portal now, but I think something that's not a streaming device now. Xbox is so big in the streaming game that I feel like their version of that would be like a streaming based thing. But I don't think I'd buy it unless I could download games on it and play offline.
So it would be more of like a powerful version of what is it like the I can't remember the name of it. Just the cloud, because I mean Ruben showed me where he had an Xbox One controller and he popped his cell phone into it and
Yep.
he was playing Halo 5 multiplayer. I was
Right.
like, this is wild that he's doing this on his phone.
Yeah. No. I guess that's a really good point. So I guess that would probably lend to it not being a cloud only device
Mm-hmm.
because they already kind of have that as an offering. So it would need to be something that has inherent power of its own that it could run games. But like,
Mm-hmm.
are they going to get Starfield running on one of those things if it can barely run on a Series X? Like, I don't know. That's like hard to believe. You know, that all those teraflops in your hand, it would be like 30 pounds for that device. So I don't know. I just don't see a revision or an update to the Xbox Series right now. Like, I don't see them adding a new Series XS. Like, I don't know what the Series D. I don't see them implementing that quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I guess they could. Like, they haven't really done any hardware updates for this generation yet, right?
Do you think we could get like a Connect bar add-on?
Oh my god. No, I don't think so. I would strongly advise them against doing such a thing. I think the smart thing is a portable thing or some really cheap version of the console that's like essentially like a streaming stick, like a Series S Lite even, just like a way easier entry point for people to jump in, because I think those things, like a smaller, cheaper handheld thing, even if it is locked to like it has to stream games or just like something you can plug directly in your TV. Like, I think they just want to find ways to get as many people playing their games as possible. And I don't know if they need a huge, big, expensive console right now. If they're talking about their next generation going to be that, because that means it's going to be a big, expensive console, right? So that's a good soft confirmation, because there's people seeing, and we've even talked about this, me and Travis, that with this announcement, if like Xbox goes the way of being a publisher and just releasing games on other platforms and not doing hardware anymore, so it's good to see that they are doing hardware. They confirmed, yes, we are still doing hardware. Don't worry about that. We're still going to make Xboxes going forward. So that's good. Probably a quick shout out, but they talked a little bit in there about wanting to protect your game libraries, game preservation, that sort of thing, and making sure that you can backwards compatibility, play old games. Games aren't going anywhere. Cross save, cross play across these different titles. So nothing really new or shocking there, but I like that. Hopefully I can play my games forevermore, and hopefully they get even better with that, because there's been certain things like I stuck Fable Lost Chapters in my Series X and it doesn't work, and that's weird. That's a first party Xbox owned game, and instead it's because they have the remaster thing available on Game Pass. So it's like, oh, why don't you just go download that? But then that version has like a shitty camera that makes me motion sick. It's like, let me stick this thing in my console. So I don't think they're going to add more games necessarily, but I guess sticking to that, meaning that whatever the next generation is going to be, all your old games are still going to be safe. You can still play Xbox original games on your newest Xbox, which is great. And I want every console. I want Nintendo to do that. I want PlayStation to do that. PlayStation to do that. So good that they are keeping that up. But
it's no, obviously that's older games and whatnot, but I think the comfort of them doing that still stands in the wake of Ubisoft saying get comfortable with not owning your games anymore. And so Xbox is just like, hey, be comfortable with we're gonna support you with those old titles, everything like that. So the right move.
Yeah. Taylor, was there anything else on this podcast? Any info that came out of this that we haven't mentioned yet?
I don't think so. I think that's everything I could think of.
Okay. When do you think we'll get the first announcement of the first game coming to PlayStation? March?
I mean,
is that too soon? Is it
I
a June showcase thing? I feel like they maybe do it outside the June showcase. I think they want the June showcase to be Xbox first party games, exclusives. Like, I think they just do this as separate announcements outside of that.
I would agree, but at the same time, I could see them thinking like, "Oh yeah," like Phil's thinking like, "Yeah, this is going to be huge. Everyone's going to be just totally like blown away by how we tackle this and present to other consoles at our own showcase." But
That's true.
yeah, I mean, other than that, it would be hard for me to really pinpoint a certain month. I would definitely think it's spring for sure.
Yeah, prior to the June showcase for sure, right?
Yeah.
I think we probably know about all 4 of them before that showcase. Would be my
Yeah, and the fact
would be
that
my
just
guess.
because of this podcast, I feel like okay, this is the things that they mention. It tells me that okay, they're much more further along with this than probably expected, and the fact that we had all these rumors and leaks, and they wanted to come forward and put this information, the statement out to clarify everything out there before they have their official announcement. I think that just goes to show that they are very close to unveiling this officially.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, I guess it'll kind of go and topic into another, or it'll segue into another topic that you're going to be bringing up. But just the fact that there's maybe not necessarily a lot of titles really releasing on another console, and here you have Xbox. Like, hey, and I joked about this in the Discord. Xbox is releasing titles for PlayStation, while PlayStation can kind of back off on releasing titles.
Yeah, let's get right into that. So our next set of topics here is for Sony and the PS5, which me and you are not PS5 owners, so maybe we are not the best people to be breaking this down, but I think it's still important news to have in here. So there's kind of been some reports coming out of just the state of Sony and some of their conversations going on here. And one thing that it seems like they are going to be focusing on, once again, this is all very much rumors. So until they post their official Sony podcast and confirm or deconfirm these things, take it with a grain of salt. But one thing they want to be doing in the future is going deeper, pushing deeper into the PC in terms of either maybe launching games day and date on the platform, or maybe being quicker about it, or maybe putting more games on PC, this being their like first party game. So big example that just came out, of course, is Helldivers 2, which is a game that's having huge success right now. One for Travis's draft list, that's doing some good points from there, but also just like sales wise, it's huge, so huge that they've had to like put a cap on how many players can even access the game because their servers are just like burning in their warehouse there. So that's the kind of success you want. You want to have those kind of problems at your studio. But yeah, that was a Sony first party. Is it even first party? It might even be third party, but it's an exclusive game, is what I'm trying to say. And it launched day and date on PC, and that's doing really well for them. So it seems like that's something they want to do more. Now, I don't think we'll ever get to the point where Spider-Man 3 or God of War, Valhalla Odyssey, or whatever the next game is going to be called. I don't think any of those will ever be in day and date with PC. But I think it'd be cool if they had their games come out quicker, because it seems really inconsistent where you have one game that's maybe like a year later, and then some of them it's like 3 or 4 years later when they're already kind of past due. Now they're big games, so people still play them, but it'd be cool to see more of that. And even from just like, yeah, maybe not those big first party games, but even smaller titles or these remasters, which I think they already are kind of doing. Maybe some of those Last of Us remasters came out PC same date, whatever. So yeah, I think that's cool. That's a good thing. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, there's definitely my computer. It can definitely handle some of these crazier games. Not all of them, but some of them. And so for the idea that some of these titles that I can't play on my Xbox are dropping on PC, it gets me super super happy. I've been eyeballing Spider-Man like weekly. I'm just waiting for that right Steam sale. Like it doesn't go below a certain price range.
What's the
like
lowest percent it's gone?
Oh, percent
lowest
I can't
price?
remember, but I think it's dropped to around like $42,
Okay.
45 from its like
That's
79
interesting because I
full
feel like those
price.
games go really cheap on like PlayStation Store.
Really, do they?
Yeah, because I remember like God of War like drops down to like 10, $15. It's
I've
like,
never seen
yeah.
Spider-Man go that low. And if
Okay.
it did, that would be an insta buy.
Maybe Spider-Man has it. Maybe Marvel's not willing to give up that bag. I don't know how it works there, but
I'm just waiting for that. And the Miles game is obviously it at base cost is cheaper, and so it definitely goes
right.
down a little bit lower. But that's one I want to play later. I want to get the
Yeah.
original Spider-Man
I'll
first,
play
and
him
so
in
I'm
order.
just yeah, exactly. So I'm just waiting for that one to go. But then there is oh my goodness, why Norman Reedus
Death Stranding.
thank you. Yeah, Death
Yeah.
Stranding. That's on PC too, and
Mhm.
so eventually I'll get around to
That's on like
trying that.
phones now, I think, actually.
Is it really? Oh
Which is
my
insane. I mean,
gosh.
I don't know if it's some streaming tech. I can't remember. I can't imagine an iPhone being able to run that game, but what do I know?
There's also, I think, did they do the day one PS PlayStation game. Was it day one or it was like on the
Oh, Days Gone.
motorcycle? Days
Yeah.
Gone. Yes, I think that one dropped on PC as
Oh, okay.
well.
I
I
totally missed that,
think.
but makes sense. You might be
Uh,
right.
yeah, Days Gone on Steam. So there's a few that I'd like to try.
Yeah.
And I'm
But it's
just I'm
slow. It's slow moving, right? Like these games take years sometimes, and there's still some that haven't come or haven't got an announcement, or and it's been like years. So it does like I don't think Ghost of Tsushima, right? Is that on Steam?
Oh, I think that is. Who's
Is it actually?
Tsushima on Steam? Ghost of Tsushima. Oh no, PC.
So there you go. That game came out in 2020, and that's so. I mean, do they plan on bringing that over? If they do, it's like, damn, that's unfortunate. You have to wait that long if you're a PC player. So it's an exclusive course, but I'm curious to see how this will change with games going forward to them. If this is truly anything that they're going to be changing in the bigger, grander scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to bring in this too that there was just a clown on Xbox a little bit here, but like Phil Spencer did this interview, and I'm just gonna read his quote here. He says, "This is about Helldivers. I will say, when I look at a game like Helldivers 2, and it's a great game, kudos to the team shipping on PC and PlayStation. I'm not exactly sure who it helps in the industry by it not being on Xbox. You try to twist yourself to say like somehow that benefited somebody somewhere." But I get it. There's a legacy in console gaming that we're going to benefit by shipping games and not putting them in other places. We do the same thing. So I just want to bring that because I just find it funny. It's like he's so like holier than thou. Like you just announced this thing, fucking earlier this week that you're gonna eventually bring some small game. It's not like you guys are bringing all your platforms all over the place. Yes, you're doing the PC thing, but it just came off as like a bit cheesy on the timing of over. I don't know, just giving himself like overinflating his ego a bit, especially when in that Xbox podcast, Sarah Bond was like bragging about Pal World, and she's like, "Oh, this is such a huge release, such a big exclusive that we had here." But it's like, is that not game the same? Does that not have the same logic as something like a Helldivers? Like, who does it help by Pal World not being on PlayStation? So I don't know. I just found their word in there to be a bit goofy. Maybe I'm reading into it too much.
No. I think you're right. I feel like someone could go in and talk to Phil Spencer, be like, "Hey, so did you see they announced like a new Spider-Man title on PlayStation? It's an exclusive." Oh yeah, okay. And then you leave the room and you go back 10 minutes later and it's like, "So what do you think about that PlayStation exclusive game?" He's like, "What? They're putting a PlayStation exclusive?" Like I feel like he forgets that exclusives are a thing, and then there's this hypocrisy
When
as
it's been
well
like clearly a
involved.
huge success for PlayStation's business plan. Like that's
Exactly.
always a
Yeah.
big deal for them. So I don't know. Like, is Helldivers 2 hurting at all? Like to not be on Xbox? Like, yeah, there would be more sales there, but like they can't even house the amount of players with their freaking servers. So I think they're doing fine, Phil. Like, get off your high horse here and go release these games before you start talking shit on everyone else not releasing their games.
Absolutely. Helldivers is definitely something that's creeped into my field of vision. Ruben was telling me about it, and so he sent me some videos
Yeah, it looks great.
and looks wonderful.
Someday I'd love to check it out. What else was there here? So, uh, I guess one thing is they for this fiscal year, ending in March, end of March, whatever it is, they were anticipating 25 million PS5s to be sold. They're rounding that down to 21 million now, so it seems like they're undersold this year. Now they still sold a shit ton of consoles, but under there, so maybe a little bit disappointed on that side. There was this quote that came out that was a bit weird, where one of the I'm trying to get who it is. The Sony VP Naomi Matsuoko about the PS5 entering, talking about the PS5 entering the latter stage of its life cycle instead of the latter half. So, just an interesting thing talking about like, okay, maybe they're like already winding down on the PS5 to some extent, and within like a year or two, that we'd be getting the next generation, which makes sense on paper to a certain extent because it's usually what like 6 to 8 years between console generations, maybe even 5 to 8. And the PS5 and the Series X came out in 2020, the end of 2020, right? So they've been out for a while now. But I guess it's just surprising to me because of this next point too, which is that apparently there are no more like big first-party Sony games coming out until next fiscal year, so like March of 2025. So obviously we have Final Fantasy Rebirth coming out in a few days, and that's a big get. That's a huge game. But then after that, Like, yes, you have Stellar Blade, Rise of the Ronin, but like, who knows how big those games are going to be, how good they're going to be. But you're not going to get any other big Sony PlayStation game until like a year away,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy to me. So that like the combo of all this news is kind of like, not like turmoil, not like they're hurting or anything. They're still doing great. But it's just interesting with the timing of, okay, if they're not going to have games for a while and the PlayStation 5 is winding down, like what does that really mean for this generation? I feel like PS5 as a whole, and maybe it's because I'm not in the platform, I don't have it, I'm not playing these games, but like what have the exclusives been for this generation? It's like you had Ratchet and Clank, you had Spider-Man 2, I guess Returnal, and then I guess Final Fantasy is coming out. Like that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
Really, everything else is like God of War, Horizon. Those are all PS4 games as well. So I don't know what my big point here at the end of all this is, but it's just very interesting, I guess, looking at the current state of PlayStation. We know that a lot of these live service games that they planned have been canceled. So if that's maybe hurting their release calendar, I'm not too sure. But yeah, just kind of some weird stuff going over on the Sony side of things.
Yeah, it's really just bonkers to think that we're only 4 years in, and to look at a console and think, yeah, it's kind of it's coming to the end of its
Yeah.
cycle right now. Yeah, when you think about the titles that were released on it, I don't think there's anything that's really nothing that's really groundbreaking. I would say either. It just seems like, yeah, they put out one, and then that's kind of it for a franchise, and maybe that's
A
just
lot of
my
just like big sequels, but yeah,
exactly.
nothing new, no big huge new IP. I mean, Returnal was a very successful game. It's a very cool game, but it still feels like it's not quite in that top echelon of the developers or IP, right?
Yeah, when you look at, I mean, it's hard to compare it when you look at a 360 and a PS3, but PS3 you have like the Uncharted trilogy,
Yeah.
Xbox you
The
have
Last of Us One, even.
yeah, Last of Us One even, and the
Mhm.
Xbox 360 you have Gears of Wars, you have Halos, multiple Halos and multiple Gears of Wars all on that console, and so I think that's what really makes that console stands stronger, and it's understandable because the technology is just at an accelerated rate. It's
Yeah. True.
Series X and PS5 is outdated at this point now with
Hmm.
what they have. So it just means, yeah, shorter spans, not 8 year waiting periods anymore. Consoles are, yeah, it's 4 to 6 years now before we get that next gen probably, and it'll be even more powerful. But it gives less time to develop a game. When you look at a game and the time it takes to produce it,
Yeah.
I'm thinking what, 2 years, 3 years, not even. Some teams are probably forced to be like a year, get this game out there, right? Like Call
I
of
don't. Yeah, I don't
Duty,
even think that's
just
possible
churning it.
anymore,
Hmm.
unless your game's like Pentiment. Like that's the only scale of like AAA, and like I don't know, Pentiment made by a AAA studio, but you wouldn't even say it's a AAA game, right? It's made by like a
Hmm.
handful of people over there at Obsidian, but like, yeah, games just take so freaking long, especially these Sony games that are huge prestige titles that they're taking their time with and they're hitting and they're massive games. But yeah, it's like what you're gonna get one game out per console as like a developer over there now. It's insane.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think it's almost like a double-edged sword. Kind of shoots himself in the foot a little bit because it just, I mean, they need to hire more people to spend more time developing these games and get these games out. Have more studios working on them, like Call of Duty has games dropping every year, or
Yeah,
even
100
Assassin's
studios making
Creed,
those games.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that, without diluting the quality, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting stuff, and like with that latter stage of the cycle, like we're very much reading into a quote here, which could even be a translation, lost in translation sort of thing too. So, who knows what it really means? Like, I still think there's going to be a ton of new PS5 games, and then even then, it's like we look at the PS5, and I'm sure a lot of those games that are in that like last year of development or in the same way God of War and Horizon had new games coming out on PS5, but we're still on PS4. PS5 is going to have that too, naturally. There's going to be a bunch of games that are going to come out on that, along with the PS6 eventually down the road. So I think we'll get to that point with the PS5, like Death Stranding 2, that's going to be a huge one. Wolverine will be another big one. We don't really know what the other ones are going to be. We have to assume Ghost of Tsushima 2, maybe another God of War game, maybe another Horizon game. I mean, Horizon, they're setting up a sequel there with the ending of the second one. So I'm sure it's going to happen. So they'll eventually get to that point. But yeah, it's like, well, we're not going to get really much of that for the next few months here. So I don't know what it might just be a little unexciting, especially when you have Final Fantasy coming out in a few days, and then it's going to be like a real big dry spell unless they do have some surprise hits, or maybe they'll pour some money into picking up a couple third-party games and turning them exclusive. Maybe that'll be part of their business plan, or maybe just the other third-party developers will turn up and have a ton of games released this year. We still, there's a lot of the calendar year that we don't know a whole lot of, so kind of remains to be seen. But kind of a bummer, I would think. I mean, for me, it's actually kind of better because I'm really holding off on this PS5 purchase. It's like, I guess I can wait a whole nother year and maybe just get that PS6 in the future or this next Pro updated version, whatever it is. I don't even know what I'll do at this point. Maybe just wait until the next console generation and skip on a couple of games. But I really don't want to miss Death Stranding, so we'll see what happens down the road. But yeah, any other thoughts on Sony here with this stuff?
No, can't think of anything.
All right, I think that's gonna do it then, Taylor. This was a fun episode. Really good discussions here this week. Next week's Sidequest, I think I'll be joined by Kirkland. He and I have not talked about games in a while because he's been busy. He's been away with school, off on trips and all that stuff. So it'll be fun to have him back here, talk about the games he's been playing. And other news, as I'm sure it's going to be coming along, maybe a Nintendo Direct pretty soon. Who knows what's going to happen. But thank you, Taylor, for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.